Back at it, Athlete Builder. Last time we were just Jim. Lucas will be back in studio with our next recording. Luckily today I'm back in the library and I have Navy SEAL Mike Getka. Mike Getka hails from Florida currently. A little bit about Mike. Met him through the chain that went from Kenny Beebe to Bill Brown to Jeff Gum to now Mike Getka. So I talked to Jeff Gum, and he recommended getting a hold of Mike because Mike was his mentor and helped him prepare for BUD/S. Mike did over 2 decades in the Navy, first with the CBs and then with the teams. He wrote down NMCB. I'll have to ask him about that, but I know EOD means you have to blow things up or stop things from blowing things up, so that's kind of neat. SEAL Team 2, Naval Special Warfare. After finishing all the fun stuff in the Navy, went on to work for a number of different groups. Worked for the YMCA with aquatics. But also the Warrior Challenge. I met some of those folks over in New York City at the SEAL Swim, and they are recruiting specifically for SEALs, SWIG, more bomb people, the ODs, the Navy divers, and the air rescue. Also from there, worked with Spartan Race, Joe DeSenna's teams. They worked in the real estate group to get Spartan races set up, even with the venues being at pro football and baseball facilities. So has a history of being an endurance athlete, worked as an elite level athlete in the teams, and then works with other folks and with being an athlete as well. Currently, he runs Mike Getka Mindset. What's that mean? He works with
Getka SEAL Mindset.
Right, Getka SEAL Mindset. So working with teams or individuals, preparing them for either Warrior Challenge or BUD/S, but also groups, whether it's a hockey team or a football team or a cross-country team, working with teams, high school, college, and beyond, just getting people better, and it seems to be his calling. So he's down in Florida. We're lucky to have him today. Mike, thanks for joining us on the show.
All right, great to be here. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, you're welcome. Just right off the bat, I imagine at some point you became a little bit more of a numbers guy, a little bit, because they would say that when you go to BUD/S, a small percentage make it. I don't know, maybe it's 10%, 15%, whatever that percentage is. Do you keep track of the guys that you send and say, hey, well, I've sent 100 people and I have a 30% success rate or 28% or a better success rate than what the average group does? Do you ever do that at all?
I never really tracked that. I mean, it was higher than the average, obviously, but you're still going to have folks that, one of the things you asked on the questionnaire is, what my favorite quote, and it's man in the arena.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't know.
Right.
Until you jump in that arena and you're cold to the core of your soul in the Pacific Ocean. That's where you find out if you want to be there or not.
Right.
So, but it was definitely higher than most.
Mike's definitely a humble person. We'll talk about that with the core values that his family's instilled in them. And we're going to get into those. We'll talk about the 3 things for the head and the 3 for the body. Today, I'm specifically going to get into some questions about nature versus nurture. Some people are born a certain way and some people are not. And other people can be built and some won't be. But Mike's job is to build people mentally and physically. It said here, growing up, didn't necessarily play high school sports, but you're in that Army brat, Air Force brat lifestyle. Your parents or your father was in the Air Force. You're in different bases. So from what I can tell, basically you played not 1 or 2 sports, but like 20 sports. Basketball, football, boxing, baseball, soccer, golf, rugby, swimming, like you name it. Is that pretty accurate?
Yeah, I just got involved in everything. So I was a skinny kid growing up. I mean, basically, I had a femur, tib, fib, and somebody painted some skin on it, and it was skinny kid. So as I started growing older, even high school, 5'11", graduating at 140.
Wow.
So I didn't play, sports with my school, but my brother and I were very competitive. So we played pretty much everything. He was a cross country runner and track, and but Lake Placid, I'm from upstate New York, so Lake Placid was 60 miles from our house.
Okay.
Learned to snow ski. I would just watch people that skied, looked at their techniques, and we just went midway up the mountain and just figured it out. And then basketball, had basketball hoop right at the on our garage. used to go to the Plattsburgh Air Force Base, play basketball all the time. And I just, racquetball, whatever it was, I like to get something where I was at least above average and then find something else to do. So I think I was telling you, my mother was voted best female athlete in high school. So she was very athletic. My dad played soccer.
Gotcha.
5'2", Polish immigrant, 5'2", 155 pounds, just an animal.
No kidding.
Working machine. So, dabbled in a little bit of everything.
Were you near Lake Placid during 1980?
I was there, absolutely.
So the Miracle on Ice and the whole deal.
So that, that's my favorite movie.
Gotcha.
There's another one. So, it's just pretty intense.
I love in one moment there's a lot of awesome speeches and moments in that film, but they're talking about, hey, we might lose 9 times out of 10, but not today. Today we're gonna play it together, and we're just gonna play basically out of their minds and attack and just go see how it plays out. When in your bio here, you're writing plays tennis 3 or 4 hours at a time, basketball 3 or 4 hours at a time, hangs out with his brother, and they're doing endurance races. And I think you said your brother's older, which then typically leads to that's the person to always chase. If I can beat him, then I'm better. I'm a better person. My parents will love me better. I smashed my brother. Fuck you. But then I also saw here 250-mile Mojave Death Race and 196-mile Napa Valley Santa Barbara race. Those.
It was actually Santa Cruz.
Man, so you mentioned relay races, but talk about those two.
So the Mojave, and that's when I was an instructor out of Buds. So there were a bunch of fit guys out there, in the teams in general. But the Mojave Desert Death Race is 250 miles, and you have an 8-man team. So each person does a couple legs. That one had mountain biking and running. So you would have a leg, and whether that was 20, 25 miles, wherever it may be, and you just hit it. And then you would meet up with somebody else. They would take over, and then you would jump in a van, go to your next spot where you're going to take over. And once it was your turn, so you may be cooling down for 3-4 hours before you're ready to go again. And it's just 100, just all out. With the Napa Valley Santa Cruz run, and one of the guys ran across the Golden Gate Bridge, but that's 3 different legs you do with that. So maybe it's an 8-mile leg. You take off, you go as fast and as hard as you can, go to the next place and wait until it's your turn again. Fast and as hard as you can, do it again. And with that one, we kind of, when we finished, I forget how many hours it took us, but when we finished, it was in the afternoon. And I think a few of us went out drinking till like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. So I don't think that's the smartest thing, and probably nothing these athletes want to do out there, but it was a good story.
I'm sure you're not the first to accomplish something pretty big and then go out and have a few drinks. That's not unique.
But here's the funny part about it. I hate to run. They just asked me to go. I just happen to be pretty good at it. But I will not just go out and run a bunch of miles. I do sometimes go out on the beach, but it's not something. I'd rather go play basketball for hours, tennis, whatever, something where there's action involved. I don't even like swimming, but it's part of the job at the time. So you stay fit, but that's something I'm not going to the pool and swimming for an hour.
Gotcha. Yeah, I find something where there's actually an activity. One, it's more engaging, it's more fun. There's more of a competition thing there. There's a little bit more skill involved than just following a black line in a pool or following a straight line on a marathon race. Also, I get too much in my head then. If I can distract myself with an activity like basketball or racquetball, like you said, then time goes by a little bit better. If I'm sitting there just pounding away, then I got to understand that I'm just sitting there pounding away, and I'm thinking about I'm just pounding away, and that sucks. So, having activity going to be way easier for me to maintain that.
Well, everyone has their passion, So my brother is the one. He's the runner. He's been running since he came out of the womb. He just loves to run. And there were a couple stories in there too about him, where I don't know when we were going to go into this piece too, but you talk about resiliency. So I've had just a little over a year ago quadruple bypass surgery. He had 5 bypasses done, and when he had that done, he was 50. He was 56, I think, 55, 56. And then a couple years later, he did the Lake Placid Ironman, And then just last year, he did the Western State endurance run, which is a 100-mile run.
Ooh.
And so he just that's in his blood. It's not in my blood.
I had the Airy Bros, Jimmy and Rich Airy. They run their own podcast. They're endurance athletes and wrestlers. So however you shape it, they like pain. And
yeah, I watch it.
And Rich, man, he's done the Leadville 100, which is at the highest point in Colorado. And they're running 100 miles at altitude. And I thought, well, you take something that's terrible and find a way to make it worse. And there you go. That's what they have.
It's a unique breed that does those races.
Oh, my goodness.
I do those races.
Now, I saw that you have your new business. It's only been around since 23, but that's not really actually that accurate, right? You've been mentoring and working with people for a long time, not just in the last year. Like Jeff Gum, as an example, said it was a long time ago, right? So you've been doing this for a while.
Yeah. So that's being the CB, that NMCB, that's just Naval Mobile Construction Battalion. Mm-hmm. And then the EOD port, I was a support guy there. That's where I kind of wanted to figure out, if I want to stay in the Navy or get out and be around the dive, spec war, spec ops community. So that's how I ended up there. And then it kind of led into other stuff. But at Buds, I think it's roughly 2,400 people through Buds. I was instructor of the year 1999 while I was there. So that was part of the training thing and mentoring. And then when I got out, one of the things that I did was the Warrior Challenge program. So like you talked, there's 26 districts nationwide, recruiting districts. I was one here in Jacksonville. So anybody from Savannah, Georgia, down to Cocoa Beach, out to Tallahassee, every month I did a rotation through to make sure these guys were physically and mentally prepared for whatever schoolhouse they were going to go to or profession they want to get into. And Jeff just happened to be one of those guys here in Jacksonville that I got to work with. So I think it was about 2,000 guys that I put through.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, you said, I don't like running and I don't like swimming. And then you sign up for Buds. Like, if you were a recruiter and they say, hey, do you like these things? No. Well, maybe this isn't for you. And you're like, well, hold on a second. How do you make that transition? How do you resolve that component in your head that I'm going to have to be in a lot of pain and something I hate, but I'm going to do this stuff anyways?
Well, I go back to it. So both my parents were extremely hardworking people.
Mm-hmm.
Father, Polish immigrant. My mother came from a family of 12 kids, hand-me-down. I mean, and so that's how they raised us. Just, you set your mind to something, you just get it done. For me, I had already been in the Navy for, 5 years, a little over 5 years. And there was this it's a Navy magazine, All Hands. And it came out and I started reading about it and what SEALs do. Okay. So what are the requirements for that? And so you've got to swim, you've got to run. Right. So I'm like, okay, I'm in shape because of all the stuff that I do, all the sports that I play, but I wasn't in running shape per se, and I wasn't in swimming shape. So I just like, okay, so I've got to swim 500 yards, and this is the time I need to hit. I've got to run 1.5 miles. And this is, the physical screening test is just, you swim 500 yards, 10-minute rest, you max out in push-ups in 2 minutes, max out in sit-ups in 2 minutes, pull-ups, and then you do 1.5 mile run. So it's pretty much bam, bam, bam. Mm-hmm. So all I did was I just, I think I did 3 or 4 swims, got in the pool and swam for a while. I got out, I got up to 8 miles running at, at least a 6-minute pace. I'm like, okay, that should be good enough. And then I took the screening test. So just kind of go back. So once I figured out that's what I wanted to do, mm-hmm. I looked at all the requirements. I put my request in. I trained probably for about a month and took the screen test, submitted my package. I got picked up. And then once I got there, it's just, okay, if running is part of the job, well, that's what I'm going to do. If swimming is part of the job, then that's what I'm going to do. So it didn't matter. I just wanted to be a SEAL. And so whatever I had to do to get there, that's what I did.
That's the thing, isn't it? What you just said right there. That's what I wanted to do. So that's what I did. What I find that people, whether they're going to law school or medical school, or they want to finish a teaching degree, or they want to do something athletic, it's the front end decision that needs to be made. and you have to be, committed to it. Most all other decisions then kind of just go away. There's no, hey, I don't feel like getting up at 5 or 6 because this is what happens next. I made this decision on this date. All these other things, there's no more negotiating. If it's running today, if it's reading today, if it's practicing arguments today or doing math problems or 1,000 dips, it's just what is on the menu for today because I made this other decision. I think people get hung up or hurt or slow down because I think they can still negotiate. Maybe not today. Well, no, the decision's already made. It's like deciding if I'm going to breathe or not. I decided I'm going to keep breathing, so then I keep going. You don't just start rehashing or rethinking it. And when people start doing that, they start slipping. Maybe I don't need this today. Maybe I don't need to study for this exam. Maybe I can skip this run. And then it's easy. Then your momentum is going in a different direction. Then it's maybe I can just quit, right? That kind of thought seeps in. And so if I'm building an athlete to go to Buds, there's a lot of different things and components I can work on. But if the decision's made, then I don't have to do a whole lot. I just say, hey, here's your homework. Do this. And they say, okay. If I have to drag you, constantly trying to motivate you and inspire, I'll do some of that. But if I have to constantly lead you, it doesn't work. How does it?
Yeah, and the best advice I got, because being at EOD as a support guy, there were some SEALs that are dual pinwearers. So there were SEAL and EOD guys. And so there was one guy that I went up and talked to. He was working out. And like, yeah, I want to go to Buds. And do you have any advice for me? So look, yes, you have to be fit. You got to run. You got to do all this. Because the bottom line is, if you want to be a SEAL, you're going to be a SEAL.
Mm-hmm.
You go to Buds, they say, this is what you have to do. One evolution at a time, one day at a time. You just keep breaking it down and get through. And he said, now get away from me. I'm like, okay,
right.
No problem. But I remembered that. And again, it goes back to, how I was raised and the example that my parents set for us. It's not an option. Once I set my mind to doing something, that's it. It's
over.
It's getting done. So you can't control injury.
No.
But,
Tony Robbins talks about that all the time, the power of decisions. And even in my daily planner today, there's a quote from Rosa Parks. It said, once you set your mind to something, everything else kind of just falls into place, and it's not really that complicated. There's still going to be some unknowns. And I know that being a SEAL is a small percentage going through Buds, right? The larger percentage is working with your unit and your teams, making an impact on your missions, right? And so many people want to make a big deal about a Buds because of all the components, we know a little bit about it as a civilian. And a lot of the missions, we know nothing, because we're not supposed to. But that's not really the identifier, right? Hey, you made it through, but now you have to do a bunch of harder stuff, right? You have to deal with pain and loss and misery and death and dying and risk and challenges and all under duress and then decision making. So that's the greater component. But along the way, there's going to be some things that you're not aware of, or you're fearful of, that you don't even know. So even if you're motivated and you decide, hey, I'm going to the teams, and you don't understand buoyancy or drown proofing, some of those things will be a little unknown for you. How do you handle those unknowns? Because it's got to be, at some point, fear has to come into your head just a little bit, and you have to have a process to address it. What is the process that you try to instill and teach and work for yourself when you're coming up on unknowns or fears?
Going to Buds, these guys now, with a prep course and then having a warrior challenge program, I mean, these guys are getting so many more tools than, back in the day when I was going to go there. You're going to do drown proofing, but the thing about Buds is everything is progressive. It's progressive. You don't just go out and run, 14 miles. You don't just go out and swim 5.5 nautical miles. Everything works you up to that, to where you're in the pool swimming. You go to the bay, swim a mile, then you go into the ocean. You start building on that. The runs, they build up. Soft sand conditioning runs. Even with drown proofing, they don't just throw you in the pool with your hands tied behind your back and your feet tied up. First, you just, you keep your feet together. You put your hands behind your back. Mm-hmm. And you just, if your hands come out, you fail. If your feet come apart, you fail. Then they'll tie your hands, and then they'll tie your feet. Then they'll tie both. And you practice. For me, never really being a water animal, on the weekends, I would just practice with pool comp. I would go there on the weekends and practice. When I was an instructor, anybody that wanted help from me, I would help them out, and we would practice. With my own business now, Getka SEAL mindset, I'm not going to tie somebody up. I don't need to, but I'll show them the techniques that they need to know. Put your hands behind your back, put your feet together, and keep them that way. But it's the travel and it's remaining calm, because wrestlers that can swim, they do extremely well. Runners that can swim do well. Actually, I kind of mixed that up here. Wrestlers that can swim, because those guys they're so negative that they sink like rocks. And the swimmers that can run, that's what I meant to say. Sorry about that. Yeah. So those guys have a hard time because they don't have a lot of impacts. A lot of those guys get stress fractures. So they can do both. You've got runners that do well, or swimmers that do well on land, and the wrestlers that do well in the pool. Those guys, they do extremely well.
Gotcha.
To go back to your question on, for me, when I went there, it's I don't know if fear, they just, every day you wake up, you know what you have to do. You're going to do a PT in the morning. You've got 4-mile time runs. You have obstacle course to do. You're going to be doing drown proofing. You're going to do pool comp once you get in these stages as you progress through the training. So, you can get together with some of your classmates, but it's just, anybody that achieves a certain level, that visualization. When I got inside the pool to do the 50-meter underwater swim, I just calmed myself down. I just took deep breaths, and I didn't think about not completing it. I just thought about, okay, I've got to jump in, feet first to a front flip, and then you go to the other side, kick off and get back, and I feel fine, and that's it. That's all I thought about. I didn't think about anything else. Never thought about, I'm not going to make it.
There's two things there. In almost every episode, I make the comment that confidence comes from reps. And with a natural progression, and if you have, like, the instructors in the entire group, they want people to pass and do well, and that, hey, we built these warriors, these athletes, and they give you guys the steps to do those things. And if people keep practicing them, you just keep practicing it, not so you got it right. You practice it so you can't get it wrong. And if you keep just practicing the basics, even before you get there, over and over and over again, your confidence has to go up. So that's one of the things I took from that, what you just said. Just do more reps and you'll feel better and you'll perform better. And then number two, when you're given a task, you said, especially with the underwater swim, I don't think about the what ifs, the negatives, or I just focus on what is the task. If it's walking from here to the chow hall, that is the task, right? And that's when those other thoughts get in that you derail, or a thought gets in and then it's a negative or a scary thought, heart rate increases, breath quickens, and next thing you know, those components of panic start to set in, and you're trying to stay relaxed underwater, right? So if you can master being present and just focus on the task, life gets a lot easier. And if you do a ton of reps, so you build the confidence from doing those tasks, now you build this ability to be unstoppable. And it sounds like that's, I'm not saying it came easy for you, but it seems to be kind of just built in your DNA.
Yeah, like I said, I never really. I read the magazine. I looked at the requirements. I checked in, and they just, from day one, because first phase is basically what I tell people. It's first phase that's a weeding out phase. So in Rocky, that piece of meat that was just hanging from the hook, that Rocky was just, that's what you are in first phase, basically, until you get through Hell Week. And then once you get through Hell Week, then you're almost treated like a human being, and they start training and, giving you some skills. But up until that point, because Hell Week was a 6-week when I went through. So that first 5 weeks was they just want to see if you want to be there. Mm-hmm. And you're tested every day. And then you just keep going through the stuff. And those evolutions like drown proofing, 50-meter underwater swim, underwater knot tying, the 4-mile time runs, the timed O courses. As you progress through the times, they keep getting lower and lower, and you just got to do it.
Gotcha.
So just on conditioning runs, those soft sand conditioning runs, that those runs are going to stop at some point, and they're going to suck. So all the officers have to get up in the front. And what I would do is get as close to them as I could. As soon as somebody fell back, I would just fill their spot. Never did I let myself fall back. Doesn't matter how fast the instructor was going. You want to stay up, because at some point, as the class starts getting spread out, that's a safety thing. So there's some point where an instructor arbitrarily is just going to go, boom, this is the cutoff. If you're in the back of that cutoff, you're in the goon squad. Now you're getting crushed until that last guy, regardless how far back he is, once he gets up, he'll take out. Everybody else they're just going in a little circle, just jogging a little circle, relaxing. So I never let myself fall back in anything. So
what do you mean by goon squad?
Goon squad is, so these guys, if you don't make that cut, they're doing 8-count bodybuilders. They're doing wind sprints back and forth to the surf zone, flutter kicks. They're getting hammered until that last guy catches up. And as soon as that last guy gets there, the instructors take off again. So what I would tell guys is, all that energy you just spent in the goon squad, getting crushed, had you used that effort and energy just to stay up, much better off. So those are things that, you just kind of pass on for guys that are going to go in there in the future.
The beatings will continue until morale improves, kind of deal.
Well, until the fat goes away.
The fat goes away. Gotcha.
Yeah, you want the weak to go away. So
you said you were smaller in school, 140, 145 pounds in high school. Were you? And you started lifting after that, and you put on a few pounds. How heavy were you going into Bud's training?
Well, I got to Bud's. I was 175, 177.
And you finished Hell Week, and you finished Bud's. A little different number then.
No, I stayed right at that number.
Really didn't,
because I didn't have a lot of body fat. I was pretty fit when I got there. So I don't know what the percentage was, but it was low. I could fill my lungs up and still sink.
Really?
So for me, even more reason, and like with the wrestlers too, you have to stay. Any water evolution, you have to stay calm, because when you tense up, you're going to sink like a rock.
Right.
And you're already a rock as it is.
So that lack of body fat for those lean athletes and wrestlers, they have to be lean because they're in those weight classes. It hurts the buoyancy, is what Mike's saying. So if you start sinking like a rock, then it's a lot more work and effort to keep going forward in that piece. Yeah. It's almost better to have a little bit of fat on you, right?
So the guys that were ripped, the running and certain things they love that stuff. The guys, because there's some 240 pounders that go to Bud's, some big guys that barely pass that time run every time, but they weren't built for speed.
Right.
They love going out in the Pacific Ocean because they're like a walrus. We used to call them the iron marshmallows. So these guys who go out there and they love being in the water. For them, it was a break. For the guys that didn't have any body fat,
right?
When that water's 50, 60 degrees, that sucks.
Right.
But those guys in the pool had a hard time getting down to the bottom because they were so buoyant. The travel and drown proofing, I don't know if you know anything about drown proofing, but basically you jump in, you're bobbing up and down just to get relaxed for 5 minutes. Then you have to float. So your shoulders, all I did is you could kick a little bit. And as soon as my shoulders would break the surface, then I would take a breath. And then you go put your head down slowly so you don't, because if you go up, you can get vertical. And then, if you're panicking, then you go down even further. So you just have to stay relaxed. Those guys could travel easily. You're just doing the dolphin kick for 100 yards, going up, turn around, go back and forth until you get to 100 yards. Floating, but getting down to get the mask, because you've got to go down and pick up a mask with your teeth. You've got to do a front flip and a back flip, and it's got to go end over end. So those guys had a hard time getting down to the bottom because they had that more buoyancy.
Okay. So
it kind of all balances out in a sense.
You mentioned, in the mindset questions, that meditation has helped you, but you wish you would have done it earlier. I'm guessing that wasn't in your tool bag back then, but being able to meditate and keep yourself calm under that kind of duress is a huge skill, right?
It is. That's what I just call it, the switch, so to speak. I mean, when there was something that, like I said, the drown proofing or pool comp or something, Hell Week, once I'm in that mode, all I focus on is completing that so you can move on to the next thing. And it's just switch it on when it's time. And
the meditation at home, working on that and calming yourself, you have to calm yourself when it's easy at home first before you add duress to it, and then extreme duress during that training. So I got to imagine that if you had practiced that or developed that skill, it would have helped you going in a little bit.
Where the meditation has helped me,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason I even started doing that stuff is because I've got 7 heart stents, quadruple bypass surgery. I had a pesky little heart attack doing a workout with Virginia High Performance. It's a workout program up in Virginia that a SEAL runs. And so when I finished that, I had a little heart attack and they threw a couple more heart stents in. But with all that, just being wrapped too tight, not ever really hydrating the way you should,
Mm-hmm.
That's why I started meditating. I'm like, okay, I've got to change some things. Unfortunately, it took 50 something years to do that.
Right.
But when I was younger, you just think you're 10 feet tall and bulletproof, and you just I didn't even think about that stuff. I just whatever had to get done would get done.
Gotcha.
And you never think you're going to have heart condition, but it runs in the family. My father had heart issues. My mother did. My brother, who's been a stud his whole life and still doing, goes out for 8-hour training runs to prepare for these 100-mile races. And he lives to run. He loves it. He does it to this day.
That's great. In terms of like a challenge for yourself, what is, you said you don't like running, you don't like doing the swimming, but you like activities. What's something that when you're out there training and you're training an athlete, something that, hey, I'm going to make this person do this. It's going to challenge them and it's going to challenge their mental fortitude. What's something you guys do to help them prepare? Because you're sending them over to buds later. What's something you do to help them prepare and handle that duress?
So what I do now, and I've done it in the past, but once I started, part of the reason I started Getka SEAL Mindset was to get these athletic teams and some business teams too. I take them out to the beach. That's my preferred place because it's a different environment. You're not out on the football field, the soccer field that you're used to. Take them out of their element, take them to the beach, and I put them. And it's basically it's buds type stuff. I put them in boat crews. There's going to be you're going to have boat crew leaders. So communication, leadership, paying attention to detail, moving with a purpose. There's going to be a class. I call her captain. So your captain will be out there. I brief the captain. He briefs the boat crew leaders. That first hour, everything's going to be too slow. Even if you do it right, it's going to be wrong. And it's just fast paced, and it can be anything from 8-count bodybuilders, bear crawls, wind sprints, a lot of wind sprints back and forth to the surf zone, getting guys. I've got workout sandbags that I use. And then after about the first hour, I start doing relay races and make it a little more fun. It's still challenging, but it's more fun because the goal at the end is to have a more cohesive team. That's just, where, and also, when the coaches are there, you'll see some of these guys, and it's just like buds. You'll see some of these guys that you think are going to be the rock stars that actually maybe they don't want to be there. So I'm not going to put out. I don't. This is stupid. I don't need this. That's just something about their character.
Sure.
The coaches see that. Their other teammates see that. Then you see these unassuming guys that you wouldn't even think would step up, that maybe even haven't in the past, that for some reason that environment just brings something out of them. So that could be a potential leader. You'll see that especially in Hell Week, where you see the true, because everything is stripped away. The true character of who that person is there, whether it's an officer, it could be some 17-year-old kid that just turns it. They're just natural born leaders in a sense, where they start taking over. They may be in a boat crew where their boat crew leader's an idiot and not getting stuff done, and they just take over. So the same thing happens at a lesser degree because I'm not, I don't have the hours to put them through what you would at Buds, but you're still going to get a good taste of what happens, and the coaches are going to see what's going on. And then if it's somebody like, there's a lacrosse team I've done 3 years now, and every year, they've gotten better. The communication is better. It's affected, their seasons. Every year they've gotten better, gotten to a higher level. And you see that. And then when these new guys come in, they're already passing it on to them. And then when they show up the next year, I just turn it up another notch and push them even harder. Because hopefully they've passed on to the younger guys what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys prepared themselves. If they didn't, you'll know. And there are no excuses.
So the adage that adversity doesn't test your character, it simply reveals it. And once you start working with that team, you did for 3 years, now there's a higher standard that first year. It's like that first time with that boat crew, you said it's going to be slow and it's not going to be right, but it was still doing things better. So that first year, it's not exactly at your optimum level, but it's definitely better. So the second year, if that's already the standard and you're starting from that level, it's easier to level up because you're not starting from scratch again. And that's the thing with your coaching staff or your athletes or people in your business team. You start setting a standard and then you just elevate the standard. Set it again and then elevate. Set it and elevate.
Yeah, because the first time I see them, there's a lot of time that is spent on getting them, just getting out of the, because every time they come out of the water, I need a head count and it's got to be fast. And these guys will run out and knowing that boat crew 1 should be here, boat crew the furthest north, boat crew 1 should be there. And every time you come out, but you see these guys run around and it's just shocking. Just do the same thing every time, guys. So once they start gelling as a team after that first hour, it's perfect. Now when they show back up the second year, I don't even have to waste a lot of time with that. It's already done. So I can get into pushing them even harder in teaching them more stuff on about trust and communication and whatever it may be. Because I always have a conversation with a coach. I'm like, what do you guys want to kind of target on this? And I'll always have, depending on what group it is, I'll have, somebody that I've worked with in the past. That's one of the buddies that showed up for this lacrosse team. He was an enlisted SEAL. I think he did 6 or 7 years. He got out, went to NC State, got his degree, and then he wanted to come back in the Navy and fly jets. The Navy didn't take him, so he went in the Marines. So enlisted SEAL, got his degree, F-18 pilot, and then one of the first 6 selected for F-35, and now he flies for one of the major airlines and one of the most humble guys. So he shows up and he kind of will give his perspective and what he's experienced in his lifetime. So we pass that stuff on to these guys too.
Yeah, success leaves clues. There's people smarter or better than me that I just simply read them or listen to them or talk to them and say, hey, man, just dump all your information into me so I can help disseminate it as well. The components at Buds, not all of it. I hate to generalize because I don't know, but the element of the cold. You said the winter times Buds candidates have a higher washout rate than the summer ones, the June and July ones. Talk about, for those that don't know, how cold is cold there? What is the cold like? How long is the cold there? What is really happening? And how do most people react to that, and how do you handle it?
Well, winter class is when real men go through, Bud. So obviously that's what I went through. But
sure.
But it's I'll tell you, it's that Pacific Ocean, and then in the wintertime they build these berms up so the water's not coming into the compound. So what they'll do, they'll get you out in the Pacific Ocean and you're wearing tri-shorts. You could have, some gear on too, or be fully, but usually if you're going out there, they're going to put you in tri-shorts. There's an immersion table. So depending on the water, but it can get down into the high 40s, but usually it's going to be for the winter class in the 50s and 60s, definitely, easily. But then you'll come up and they'll get you on the top of the berm. So you've got the wind chill. So it just cuts straight through your soul. Yeah. And so how you deal with it is that evolution has to end. It has to end at some point. They can only keep you in the water so long if the temperature is this. So there are different iterations they send you through, and then that when you leave there, they're gonna have to run you or do something to warm you back up to get your core temperature up. So you just have to. All you can do is you just go in and you suck it up until it ends, and then you do the next thing, and that's all you should be thinking about. And the guys that are, you'll have this little game in it, little devil or whatever you want to call it, this little voice in your head. Well, I really wanted to be a lawyer. My parents didn't really want me to be. So all these, excuses start coming at you, or I won't say excuse, but a way out.
Mm-hmm.
You justifying why you shouldn't be there. Not that it sucks and you're cold, and that's okay. It's not for everybody, but, the guys that, when you talk to them and say, well, what happened? Man, it was hard, man. It was cold. Respect. These guys that make up excuses, I mean, just own it.
Yeah.
It sucks. It wasn't for you. And just go on and do some other great things in your life.
Sure.
But again, it's one of those things. The guys that make it through, and you can talk to, 15 different SEALs, and they'll tell you maybe 15 different things on how they process it or whatever. For me, it was, whenever somebody quit, I just took that energy and like, okay, I'm still here. But as far as everything else, and I know you've heard it a million times, it's one evolution at a time.
Yeah.
That evolution has to end. There will be the next thing. And then you do that. That has to end. And then the other big part where most guys will quit is, you eat 4 times a day out of that 24-hour period. Because other than that, you're going. So you get that hour, you go in the chow hall. It's nice and warm. Maybe you get a hot cup of cocoa and you're warmed up. And you know that as soon as you leave that chow hall,
Pain.
You're going someplace wet and cold.
Yeah.
Every single time. And guys just, nope. I think I've heard on some of your other podcasts, I heard somebody talking about this where, it's the same but different. There's especially in the beginning, you'll have the guy that's just crushed everything up until Hell Week. And that's the guy that everybody thinks is going to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as they quit, you'll see 10 to 15 people just go with them. Well, this guy can't make it. I can't make it.
That's that comparison problem. I can never beat this guy. I could never. It's that imposter syndrome, limiting belief. Or I can beat that person, how that person beat me. And really just focus on you. Focus on you and your task and your teammate, and that's about it. But you're just changing your focus. And all I have to do then is think, well, Mike says if I change my focus, I'm going to drown in that underwater swim. Because his only way of surviving it is doing your flip, go down 25 meters, kick off, and go back. And if I change my focus, I'm not going to make it. So if you just go back to that basic little rule, everything else is a lot easier. But it's easy for me to say, and I'm just doing it on a podcast right now. It's easy to say, and it's much harder to do.
But again, I mean, when you're going there, whether the 5th minute in the practices, I never went more than 35 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I'd come up, but on test day, you have to do 50 yards. So when I was standing, that morning, just thinking, just breathing, expanding my lungs, and just all I thought about was going through the steps I had to go through. Because a 50 meter underwater swim is really not that hard. But if you get in your head and you're panicking, then you're going to be burning through your oxygen quicker. You have to calm yourself down because all that it's all for a reason. So if we're going through that pool comp where you've got twin steel 80 tanks on your back, you've got a double hose regulator. These you start crawling to the bottom of the pool, instructor comes down, rips your mask off, rips your mouthpiece off, maybe turns your air off. And then it gets to the point where they tie a knot in it where you're going to have to take these tanks off. Well, there's a sequence you have to go through. And there's a sequence you have to go through. You take these things off, a sequence you go through, you get your air turned back on, you start breathing, put your tanks back on. There's a sequence you have to go. If you don't do the right sequence, if you panic, you fail, even if you can hold your breath forever. So it doesn't matter. So you just go through that until eventually they'll tie what's called the whammy knot. You're not going to get that untied. So you just kind of have to fold everything up, put your weight belt, and then you just go, I feel fine, and then you're done. You have to stay calm. And the reason all that stuff happens is say you're out in a dive in a harbor and you're on a ship and your dragger malfunctions and your air's not working. What are you going to do? You can't freak out. You've got to find the seam of the ship and follow your way out. So the reason they do all that stuff is to prepare you in case something were to happen. You can't panic. You've got to keep your mind about you. And so all the stuff that there's a rhyme to a reason. Even in, you do room inspections, your boots have to be, your laces have to be right over left over. Nobody cares about that. It's paying attention to detail. Mm-hmm. So,
if there's anything I hope people take from the show or talking with me or with you is that there is a process or a sequence for just about everything. And what there isn't a sequence for, we haven't invented it yet. There's a process for algebra and then algebra 2 and then geometry and calculus. There's a process. So if you find someone that knows the process and you just keep doing that, you're going to get to wherever you need to be. But that's the thing. People will say they want this or they think they want this, they just don't do the process. Now, if you know nothing, if you can hit the basic minimums, you could do your 1.5 mile run and your push-ups and everything else, then you had the physical capabilities to get through. And if you have that mindset, I'm just going to do whatever it takes, then you're basically done. You can do it.
When you say the minimum standard, you're talking about for the screening test, the entry-level screening test?
Sure. So essentially,
if you're doing minimum standards for that, I don't even know why they have them that low. But you're not graduating both of those. You haven't put the miles in because I didn't run, because I didn't really run a lot before I went. I got up to 8 miles but I didn't put the miles in. So I got stress fractures while I was at Buds and just took Motrin and you suck it up and get through and stuff. Whatever happens, happens. But I should have put more miles in. And I made sure that anybody after that, when you're mentoring and training guys, that you put the miles in. Same thing with swimming. You've got to put the miles in so you avoid the chance of getting injured.
Well,
I was stupid.
That's where I was going with it. You can muscle your way through if you can hit the minimums, but it's really a much smaller percentage then. Why not set yourself up for maximum chance of winning? So if I got 2 years out, I'm going to be doing all the push-ups and pull-ups, all the runs, all the swims. I'm going to learn how to jump out of an airplane. I'm going to learn how to scuba dive. I'm going to learn hand-to-hand combat. I'm going to learn basically everything I can shove into my head and into my body in preparation because I know everything else is going to suck. Why not set myself up for a better chance of winning?
If you can do everything, that's great.
Not everybody can.
But you don't need to jump off a plane. You don't need to do the scuba dive, but it's not going to hurt. I didn't do any of those things, but it's just, but it absolutely, without question, it's not going to hurt you to do that kind of stuff. For me, when I was going through, unfortunately, it happens. You hear about guys that go straight through. That's awesome. That wasn't me. I got into Hell Week and I think it was Wednesday or Thursday. It was, and then I aspirated some water it's a 1 mile swim I think we do, and ended up getting double pneumonia. So I was in the hospital for 4 days. I think I lost like 20 pounds. So I had to skip a class and then class back up with the following class. So it was 166 I started with, and I ended up graduating 168. And because, if you don't make it to a certain, Thursday night in Hell Week or whatever it is, or Wednesday night, you get rolled back to day one and you have to do it all over again.
Sure.
At least that's what they did, at that time when I was back there. So I had to go back to that first phase again in another Hell Week, last whatever hours, which sucked. But
sure. That's what yeah. How do you handle the swimming in the ocean when you can't see because your eyes, you have to. Usually if you're swimming in a pool, you can see what's going on around you. But in the ocean, you really can't. So how do you handle that?
Well, as far as Buds goes, it's a concave beach. So you find a landmark. There was like a tower. And when you're swimming, you're pointing where you want to go. So if you can guide well, stay on a straight line, you're good. But some guys were zigzagging all over the place. You're turning that 2 mile ocean swim into 2.25, 2.5.
Yeah.
So you want to stay just outside the surf zone, and you just want to have that target, and you just want to guide toward it. Especially when you do that 5.5 nautical mile swim, and you have fins. So usually at least one guy, because you've always got to swim, but at least one guy is a pretty good guider. If you get both guys that are pretty straight, then you're even better.
Well, that's like me in the golf course. I don't really play that much, and you mentioned before we recorded.
Play the whole golf course.
Yeah, well, I sure do. So a 7,000 course plays 8,000 for me. So, yeah. Is it only side stroke when you guys are out there? No freestyle.
I'm at side stroke because it's just efficient. You're not using as much energy to do it. It's low profile. It's less. You're using less energy. So that's
one of the things.
And here's another thing to go back to. When I was getting guys prepared in the Warrior Challenge program, the first time I would meet them for the screening test, I'm like, look, I care what your numbers are right now, but I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
When I see you a month from now, if your numbers are the same as they are right now, you need to think about doing something else because you're not committed to doing this. You should be stronger. Every single month I see you should be stronger and stronger and ready to go and have more questions for me.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So you're I don't know if you're like me, but I'm more of a nurture versus nature. Like you'd be born a certain way, fine, but you can learn just about anything and build just about anything. You talk about building mindset and knowledge, but the training going into it. You said a lot of the runners did well that could swim, or swimmers did well that could run. I can't remember all the wrestlers. It seems like I don't want to say it's just cardio bunnies, but don't you have any meatheads that make it through too? Because the guys that like to lift, or is it just all endurance athletes?
No, there's some big guys. I mean, it's the full spectrum. Anything you can think of. There's guys that, like me, I didn't play organized sports in high school. I mean, like I said, I played sports and I would ride my bike. And my brother and I used to ride our bike. We would get up. It was 4 miles to the golf course. So we would get on our bikes, get our golf bags, and we would ride to the golf course. We would play up to 36, 45 holes. And then, so it'd be like 6 a.m. and we'd get home at 6, 7 o'clock at night. So 8 miles round trip. So that wasn't organized sports and I guess not considered an athlete, so to speak, or at least, in a formal setting. But there are guys that never played sports that go there or very little. And then there are guys that they're the meatheads that just lifted weights but you still had to do some running and swimming to get there. You had to, because you've got to pass that screening test and there are other timed evolutions that you're going to have to pass. But the guy, like one of the guys that he was a captain for the Navy Academy football team. He was a linebacker. Clint Bruce, he was 240 pounds. I think he got down to 230, but he's just a big man.
Yeah.
And, he didn't pass those 4 mile time runs by much, but he got them done. And you still got to run that O course. And by no means was he, just cruising through that thing. It doesn't matter. It's like, here's the time you have to meet.
Yeah.
So get it done. And even the minimums, especially once you get into third phase, everything's gotten reduced quite a bit. So, you've got guys that are 140 pounds that get through. So the heaviest guy I know was like 260 pounds that got through.
Wow.
Guys 6'6" to 5'4". So it's all the guys that were, Ivy League graduates, right. Division I athletes, some guys that missed just going Olympic, some guys that were actually, there was a guy that I worked with that was on the Olympic team. What was it, 1984, the one that got boycotted? Yeah. So he was a breaststroker from the University of Florida. Couldn't go to the Olympics, so he went in the teams. You've got guys that are literally rocket scientists, have their degrees, just some brilliant guys, and then guys that, barely got through high school, not that they weren't smart, school wasn't their thing, but it's like, these are the grades I need, these are the requirements, so they got that stuff done. And then you see these guys flourish in a setting, because professional development in the teams never ends. You've got language schools, intel schools, shooting schools, leadership. I mean, it just never ends. And you'll see these guys, once they're in their element where they belong, they go to the top. But it's a huge array of people and diverse backgrounds.
I don't know if you listened to the Bill Brown episode. He's a SEAL guy, and he just ran that New York City SEAL swim at.
We just up there with him in New York.
I was just there, yeah. It was quite well. One, it's humbling to do. I find I'm a total dork like my wife, so I was there a couple days early, and I'm going to the Statue of Liberty and the Federal Building. I do all this nerd stuff, right? And it's very humbling when you see things that that are historic and talk about your freedoms. And the thing that gets me about the military is that in any profession, even those that are great doctors, they're still shitty doctors, and there are great people in the teams, but there's got to be someone who's a big douchebag asshole in the teams as well. I'm sure, right? No one's perfect, and but
that's why they make it up to you,
right? But at the end of the day, anybody in the military at some point had to agree on their contract that, hey, if things get really horrible, I'm willing to put my life on the line for all the rest of the citizens. And since I didn't do that, I'm always very humbled by those folks that simply say, I will do that for you. So participating in that event was, again, humbling, but also impressive. The thing that I remember about Bill's episode, a number of things, he said that he came from this minority background, from the schools that he was at, only a white guy, and he was just basically, he called himself a rough and tumble kid. He was just fighting all the time, getting in fights, in jail before 18, a number of times, makes it through school barely, and the Navy saved his life by giving him some type of purpose and direction and the discipline. Goes on to the teams, finishes up there, then he gets his college degree, and then damn, he's now a lawyer, right? So he's no idiot, right? And his whole thing is about making an impact. So that discipline just carries over in so many different arenas. Anything stand out when you were an instructor? Hey, I'm not going to say that some of the people I talk to about you, Mike, someone will accuse you of saying that you take a little bit of pride in being an asshole as an instructor. At the same time, they'll say that you're a great guy and you're there willing to instruct, help, and get them better. So there's that heart component that you're alleged to having. And then there's that asshole component you're alleged to having as well. And they kind of go hand in hand. You have any response to anyone that may have said that?
It's all propaganda. No, it's I've always been pretty intense, but as a first phase instructor, I challenge, because like I said, that's the phase where you want to see who wants to be there, mm-hmm. and you just weed the ones out that don't belong. But on the other hand, anybody that asked me to come in on the weekend to help them out, whether it was drown proofing or whatever it was, I would come in every weekend. I was single back then, so I didn't care. And I would stay there for many hours. And I loved inflicting pain on people to challenge them. It was my therapy, so to speak. No, but that's, anybody that goes there, because the nurture part, even, training guys now, when you tell me you want to be a Navy SEAL, I'm not going to spoon feed you a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to, I'm going to ask you why. And then I'm going to have you do most of the heavy lifting. Even with the work, I'm not just going to give you a workout program. I want you to go out there, do some research, and bring something back to me and show me what you're going to do. And then I can add to that. But I'm going to put the onus on them, because I didn't have anybody spoon feeding me. Now it's hey, fantastic if you can find all that, you've got the information out there and the resources, which they do now. That's great, but you still need, in my opinion, put the onus on them to let them figure it out. If you go to the SEALSWIC.com website, they've got all the stretches that you need. They have nutrition on there. They have workouts for you that, they had some high-end people put that stuff together. And so you had that. But I'm not just going to give you a workout and say, hey, I need you to do this. When I show up in a month, or before when I was doing it, when I showed up in a month and you were still the same guy, you didn't like me. If you showed up to Buds thinking it was the instructor's job to get you in shape before all these programs were in place, you didn't like me. You didn't like me. If you had an attitude, you didn't like me. So
one of our guys, he was on maybe our second ever episode. His name's Coy. He's an Army Ranger, and came out of my gym, and we worked with him, some other older Rangers in my gym that are police officers now, and they helped with me and helped us train this kid all night long one night to help kind of give him a frame of reference that you can be in pain, but it's going to end at some point, so you'll be fine later. It was just to give him that rep, so you had the confidence that you can get through basic and Ranger school. He just did this Ranger challenge where it's like you and this other teammate, you're trying to do a whole bunch of shit, and it's like 80 hours of I hate my life. And I said, hey, what percentage did you give? He goes, yeah, 100. I go, really? He goes, actually, it was a little more than 100. I go, how so? Because some point, my teammate had to carry me a little. And at some other point, my teammate was falling down, and I had to carry him a little. But together, they took 5th overall. And so is there a moment when you're going through training where your teammate had to carry you, Mike, or is there a moment where you had to help carry someone else? Because no one gets anywhere alone, right? In anything. No one squats 1,000 pounds alone, but people squat 1,000 pounds, right? So How was that for you? Because teamwork is a huge.
Well, I can say going back, when I got pneumonia, because I was doing well. I was first time every time, just going through and then got pneumonia, and then had to go and wait for an entire class. You have to wait for your class to finish up. Then you see them going on to the next phase. Then you're in basically purgatory, just waiting the class back up. And so, there were times I'm thinking, do I want to do all that again? So there were some guys that said, yeah. So other than that, you just, I don't know. I wasn't the group that I was with, the guys that mainly, I mean, most of those guys or all those guys graduated. It just didn't happen. You didn't need that. That was a one time for me, at least. Other than that, it was a pretty strong, focused group.
Gotcha.
Just like in everything you do, throughout your life, you've been around some, what you were talking about. What was it with JP Morgan that you used to work with? Or
sure did.
You were with some pretty some pretty driven people.
Yes.
Some high end folks that so it you can't help, and you're competitive.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to, just like in the teams, there's that guy that's up here, and everybody wants to, he's the king, and everybody wants to take that crown. So they're pushing to take it, which drives him up, and everybody just keeps going up, and everybody goes to another level. And that happens with any successful group or team.
That requires an ego that handles that component. So if you're hurt, you stretch your hamstring and you're not playing point guard anymore, and the guy behind you is playing, the concern is that a person is going to take your spot. The whole Wally Pipp story with Lou Gehrig. And so there's fear, or you'll see like Brett Favre didn't want to help out Aaron Rodgers and teach him the backup quarterback when those quarterbacks get drafted. Well, the fear is that what you're doing right now is not going to be enough because the person behind you is going to outwork and outperform you. And what I challenge people and say, hey, get that person behind you way better than you so they could take your spot. It then forces you to evolve and still outpace that person. And when you do that, the whole team's better, you're better, because you're not going to sit there and tell me that I'm hoping to stay at this level that I'm at today on Wednesday. No, I'm hoping to be at this other level in 30 days or 90 days. And the best way to do that is to build a team around you so they're better than you, so that forces you to elevate your game as well.
That's what I mean. A good leader is training everybody below them to take their job.
Yeah, right. Because sometimes
shouldn't be afraid of it. I mean, then
sometimes the leader gets shot or pulls a hamstring. Right?
Yeah. You got to step up and get it done.
Those 4 meals a day, how many calories can you shovel in to maintain? Because I've heard some numbers, right? Because
I couldn't even tell you. This is what's kind of so the officers have to eat last,
right?
And there's times where those guys are trying to just cram food down. They may have 10 minutes. Maybe 15. There's times where you're not getting a full meal, and it may not just be usually during Hell Week. I mean, everybody's got their time to do it, but they're going to have less time. But how many you can, I don't know. Sometimes you're just, your body's adjusting to not going to sleep for that many hours. So you may not be able to get food down on some of those meals.
That stress level, so cortisol is getting wrecked. Your body's wanting to retain, but you're burning all the time. The whole hour, your body is still burning so you got to be full, and you start running again or swimming. You got to want to vomit, and you're like, holy shit, I need those calories.
Some people do. It's just, but you get as much in. I don't know what the number is, but you can
shovel it in, right?
I'm not a fast eater. I'm a very deliberate eater. Always have been. Always the last one. So for me, I mean, just trying to eat fast, that was a challenge.
Yeah.
But you can cram a lot of shit down your throat when you need to.
Something funny, like I remember I listened to one of Jocko's podcasts, and he asked for permission during Buds to take off and land like an airplane. So he's kind of like with his arms, he takes off and running towards his berm and then comes back. And it was just to alleviate some tension, but you have to ask permission. You can't just go off and do that shit. Anything like that, kind of like, hey, this is going to suck today, but let's start singing a song, or any of those moments to help alleviate.
I'm trying to think of because there were some guys that had a lot of fun at butts. They didn't care.
Right.
There were guys that, when I was in instructor, putting them through that, this guy Lively, I mean, he had to be 180. He was a fit guy, could do push-ups forever. That guy had a smile on his face every single day during Hell Week. He didn't care. Another officer that I put through, John Doolittle, same way. Had a smile on his face every single day.
Just having a good time. I'm out here on the beach, working out. And
getting paid to work out.
Right.
So it's all attitude.
Right.
Perspective, attitude, however you want to put it. But yeah, there's some funny stuff that happens. Nothing's just popping into my head right off the top, but one of the things we did, this was 100 years ago, so I'll talk about it now, and I'm sure people have tried it since, and maybe some more are going to try, and if you get caught, you're going to get crushed. But, have you ever heard, there's stories out there that even when I was going through that, you hear about a class that there was a boat crew that put helium in their boat before Hell Week.
Make it lighter.
And we heard about that. So we did it.
Oh, boy.
We filled it up. We had guys that were positioned as watches to make sure nobody was coming in. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning. We got a cylinder of helium and went to the boat. We filled it up. Now, you'll hear stories when you kick it, it'll scoot across. It doesn't do that, but 2 people can easily lift that boat up. And it won't last the entire Hell Week, but it'll last. If you get caught, I don't think it would have been worth it, but we did it. We got away with it. And
so
nobody knew.
Is it, if you're not cheating, you're not trying, or is it it's integrity?
That's one of the sayings,
right?
Yeah, that's one of the sayings that goes around. There's times you can cut some corners.
Sure.
You get caught.
Pain. Yep. Yeah. Lots of pain. Right.
You'll pay the man without question.
I played a little bit of sports in high school, and then even on the club team with racquetball at Purdue, there was a little bit of this, but I was also in a fraternity. And whether you play sports or you're in a fraternity or sorority or you're in the teams, every once in a while, there's been alleged accounts of hazing. Now, I'm sure that never happened when you were an instructor or when you were there, but allegedly there could be some accounts that you're like, Jim, you won't believe this shit, but I got to tell you about this one thing.
Well, I can talk to you offline.
Gotcha. Okay.
You want to hear some stories? I can tell you some stories, alleged stories, hypothetical stories.
Hypothetical stories. All right. Well, we'll see. Other than the training to get there, what do you miss about being with the teams?
It's just the caliber of people that you're around.
Yeah.
Because even, there always has to be that guy. There's always got to be somebody that is at the bottom, in whatever respect, So, but even that guy is still well above the average person out there that you're ever gonna work with. So that level of trust and just, that whatever has to get done, it's going to get done above and beyond whatever it has to get done. You don't have to worry about if, it's that part right there, the camaraderie, just that level of people. And, you don't need to worry about hurting somebody's feelings. If there's somebody screws up, you let them know.
That's exactly what Bill said. It's just the caliber of the man, is all he said. You're just around a different level of doer. Right. What if I said, hey, if you work with Mike and to prepare, you're a coach with his team, what's a component that's unique and separates you? What are they going to get when they buy you, when they buy your process, your system, your coaching? What am I going to say? Hey, I got Mike because he will get me this. He will do this. This will happen. I will achieve.
So if you talk to people that know me and you say, tell me about Mike, it's like, it's Getka. Nobody calls me Mike, but it's always Getka. But like I was telling you earlier, I'm stupid honest. Mm-hmm. I'm not the nurturer. You come in there, I'm going to be brutally honest, but I'm going to set the expectations. There won't be any gray areas. This is what I expect. This is what we're going to do. you do this, it's good, but you're going to get pushed. I'm going to bend you, not break you. And at the end of it, you're just going to be a more solid team. So, there's a lot of guys that do stuff that I do. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way or anything, but they're not me. Just like with what you do at your gym. And who was it there? It was a podcast you had on recently. I forget her name. She gave, I think, one of her kidneys.
Yeah, Mimi Mahan. She was out of my gym, and she runs her own gym now. She gave a kidney for her mother.
Yeah. So one of the things she said was, you might want to go to this gym down the road here because they may have what you're looking for, type thing. She trains a certain way. You train a certain way. There's, like I said, there's other people that do what I do. They're not me.
Right.
So the way that I do what I do, it's just going to be different than other people because they're not me. And again, not trying to, I don't know if I'm coming off arrogant with that or not, but that's the only way I can.
It's a reality, because you're who you are. And then people will train with you. Everyone's gonna get the Getka flavor. If I go to Bud's right now and they look at my resume and I don't list this or word gets around that Getka trained me for a year to prepare for this, is there a target on my back, or is it?
Look into Bud's and they know, they're gonna expect
a little more.
They're gonna expect anybody, and that's not just me. If somebody knows that a SEAL and they find out when you go to Bud's, they're going to give you some extra love.
That's great.
Because somebody probably, they mentored you. They gave you some insight as to what you need to expect and how you should prepare to get there. So, somebody finds out, somebody. Yeah, they're going to, every day, they're going to call your name and give you some extra love. So there's two ways that you're going to get attention at Bud's. You're a turd, or you stand out. You're exceptional. And this is something else I like to put out there. There's times when some people believe, I don't believe in this, but you hear people say, well, just kind of blend in, be the gray man.
That's usually what I hear.
That drives me absolutely crazy. There's no CEO or anybody that's got to the highest level that just blended in. Never, that I know. So when I hear people say you should want to be number one, if you end up number 10, okay.
Sure.
But at least you were striving for greatness and to get to the top. But I don't. Every time I hear that, it makes me twitch. No. Why? Why would you want to blend in?
The point of being on the teams is to stand out and do things that are impressive and hard, right? That's the point.
Well, then, so once you get to the team.
And so why would you want to be an average person and then be on a team that stands out? There's a disconnect.
But you want to be humble.
Sure.
The greater the man or the woman, the more humble you should be. And, once you get through Bud's, so you don't need to go out there and tell people, anybody out there, I don't care. If you got to tell somebody how great you are, you're probably not that great.
Chris is one of the guys at the gym. He's near retirement from the police force. He's a ranger and in a prior life. So he teaches a number of things with the police department. One's, marksmanship and then hand-to-hand combat. And there's a number of cops that train. And another friend of mine, Mike, I'm asking, because Chris if you talk to Chris, he's all smiles, happy-go-lucky, everything's great. Nothing really freaks him out. Nothing really stressed about. And I see these younger guys that are cops, and they're all capable people. And I asked Mike, "Hey, Mike, these younger guys, they all whip Chris's ass because Chris is getting older because he's in his 50s." And Mike's like, "No, Chris is all fun and games, but he has that level where he doesn't go and show off and talk about this and that. He has this level of knowledge and expertise on how to hurt people, and if he wanted to, they'd all be dead in a second. And you wouldn't know it. He's completely unassuming. He's your best buddy until things are going in a bad direction. The next thing you know, that switch gets flipped, and he's this lethal weapon. So the smile's gone, and he's a whole different person. But you wouldn't know because he doesn't talk about himself. He's just talk to Chris. He wants to go fishing, right? And when a push came to shove, he's the person you avoid, right? And so I see what you're saying. You want to be at the top, but the humility. No one's really. If you're at the top, you don't need to be stomping on the people below you. It's people that are weaker minded and below. They're trying to pull and tear the people down above them, right? You never talk about other people that are supporting the leader. They're like, you don't want to be smashing on them, pushing them down because they're helping keep you going, propelling you up. I saw that you said that when you train, when you do your own training, you listen to nothing. So that tells me you're just in your head a lot, trying to either thinking about your breathing, or you're using to meditate, or using to kind of, for me, calm myself down, and I'm trying to get rid of other thoughts in my head. I'm using training to actually as therapy. But is there a place that you and your wife, or an adventure that you guys haven't done yet, that you wanna, I'd still like to do this, or I'd like to go here and see this? Anything coming up?
New Zealand.
New Zealand.
Yeah, New Zealand. Want to get out to New Zealand? It's on the list.
Any chance you're an All Blacks fan? Because I am.
You talking about the rugby
Yes,
team? Yeah. That chant.
Yeah, but
they're the ones that do the chant, right?
the haka. Yeah, the haka and its translation are written on my gym wall. It's painted up there on the wall. I saw them compete in Chicago once, and I'd absolutely like to see them. And if you read James Kerr's book Legacy, they follow the rugby team, and it's all about leadership and how they build the standard for that team. Because in the history of Earth, no team has won more than the All Blacks. In over 100 years, they've won more than 75% of their games, or their matches, and the most titles. So they just win everything, and their standards are just that high. How about watch movies? Like, you have a favorite sports movie?
Yeah, it's Miracle.
Okay.
Hands down. There's a bunch. There's so many out
There's
there.
1,000 out there.
Inspirational movies, but that one, just the way that he got these college kids, and because you don't have more talent,
Right,
basically than the Russians do, but we're going to be more fit than everybody. And to me, I mean, you can use that because there are teams out there. Because think about it. If you go into overtime or whatever happens, if you're more fit than the other team, what happens too, and the reason SEALs stay as fit as they do is, once you start getting tired, your mental acuity starts to wane. That's where you make those, you do that stupid, maybe you jump off sides or whatever it may be. But if you're more fit and you go in those extra minutes, now your lineman more fit than the other, making that hole now, or whatever it may be. You just have, you get that edge. So to be more fit and have the talent too, but the way he pushed them and brought that team together, that's
the two things I took. It was their ability to outwork, but also how they were all on the exact same letter of the same word, or the same sentence of the same page. They were so together. That was always, Herb Brooks was a coach. How about a favorite sport to watch, participate in?
And right now it's golf.
Okay.
Just love golf.
And then athlete to watch?
What's
athlete
that?
to watch?
I don't really have one right now, to be honest with you.
It could be a historical one.
But I just watched that documentary on Barry Sanders.
Okay.
Recently.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I know which one it is. I
didn't realize that man was that humble and watched it. Unbelievable.
Okay. I will. My wife and I watch a lot of documentaries.
That is unbelievable. The man that he was and is as a player.
How about a favorite book?
So one recently that a buddy of mine turned me on to was Top Dog by let's see who is it. Yeah, it's Poe Bronson and Ashley Merriman. The Science of Winning and Losing. It's a great book.
Big reader, so I'll probably have to get that. You have a favorite hero or villain? Could be fiction.
Yeah, the hero is Superman. I mean, the standard thing as a kid, that was the guy. Villain, I don't really have a villain that.
I like Hannibal Lecter. Hannibal Lecter is my villain.
Yeah.
How about a lift? Favorite lift to perform?
Bench.
What do you bench, bro? Right. And then quote.
Man in the arena.
I have about 4 people so far. So about 10% of my guests so far is a man in the arena.
And then there's one I always throw out there that, there are 2 ways of doing things. The right way and again.
Doing it again, yeah.
I always do it right the first time.
Did you?
The mind drives the machine.
Did you check out Atlas Shrugged yet? Because I think I recommended that to you.
Haven't yet. The Atomic Habits, I'm like chapter 5 on that.
I
But
tell people
I will.
when you do Atomic Habits, don't read more than a chapter a day, because you can
Okay.
breeze through it pretty easily. But the point is to implement what you just learned, right? So think about how you're going to apply each chapter. If you listen to episode 8 of this show, I break down every chapter of Atomic
Okay.
Habits. Atlas Shrugged is an outstanding book. If you read The Fountainhead is one that comes before it. You do not need to read them in sequence at all. That does not matter. The Fountainhead is more on individuality. The Atlas Shrugged is, hey, I'm going to do things and stay true to my character, despite outside influences, and how that plays out. And yeah, those two are probably my favorite pieces of fiction. Yep.
I got a question for you. Do we have time, or do you got to get off?
I have a few more minutes. I got time for sure.
So with your gym and stuff, and what prompted you to get that started? I know, I heard the story, but from the time you opened it to, what how did you grow it,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, or tips, or we can maybe take this offline at some point.
So
I'm still in the beginning phases of growing this thing.
So how do I grow the gym, right? And that's a really good question, and one I'm not great at. As good as I am at selling, as good as I am at pushing people, as good as I am at those things, I am not good at marketing. And there's people that live in this town, in a suburb of Indianapolis, and I've been here almost 12 years. And they'll drive by, they'll come to my gym, and they'll say, "How long have you been here?" I say, 12 years. And they're like, "No shit, I didn't know you were even here." I'm like, "That's how fucking bad I am at marketing, right?" So in terms of building what I'm trying to build here, and culture is going to be our number one asset. And it's always ebbing and flowing, but ideally, it's going to stay true to, we want people in this, for typical adults, not people trying to go to the teams. We want you stronger, mentally and physically, and want you in shape, mentally and physically. So a lot of CrossFit gyms, not all, but a lot, spend a lot of their time on the conditioning piece and the skill work. And I'm like, well, if you can't squat, deadlift, and do pull-ups and press, then you're still a weak person, so that's not cool. And so same with Mimi's gym, they had that same approach. A lot of CrossFit gyms just do a lot of cardio, which is absolutely fine. But she's like, this is why this is our gym, and if you don't like this is not going to be for you. So at all points in our gym's history, we have people lift. And the other thing, so there's 6 core values. One's integrity, so we're trying to do the right thing all the time. Don't always do, but we try. Discipline is going to get you your results. Teamwork, no one gets there alone. Kaizen is a Japanese term for constantly getting better. Enjoyment, you got to kind of have fun doing this, because if you hate every bit of it, it's not sustainable. So if you enjoy most of what the teams are, but you hate the running and the swimming, well, you're not running and swimming every day. You do other shit. And then there's the word sisu. It's a Finnish term. So I'm not from Finland, but it's the mantra for the entire country. And it means that when you're at your worst, when you're suicidal, when you're looking at addiction, you just don't quit. You just keep going. So if people come in and they see that's what we're about and that's what they want, then they'll stay. And if that's who they are, then they'll bring some other folks. So we're always bringing in new folks, but we're only keeping some over the course of a year, right?
Okay.
But those that stay 6 months or a year, they end up staying 10. They don't. So there's people that have been in my gym, some of the coaches have been there since I opened. I think the average age of the staff is in the 40s for sure. One of my coaches turned 60 this year. He's his PE teacher, but essentially, we liked to be stronger, in better shape, have a good time doing it, and constantly, pushing a little bit. That's not for everybody. And so when I talk to new folks, the best way to grow the gym typically is through word of mouth. And it's not going to be from your older or more veteran athletes, because those folks, their circle of people already know that they're at my place. But someone that's new, their circle doesn't really know about our place yet. So anybody that's been here less than a year, those folks are the ones that I haven't tapped into their circle of friends yet. So I have to ask them what other people like to work out, what other people want to have large goals, what other people need to be in shape, what are former athletes that are in your circle. And then I'm just authentic in that and say, hey, I want to make as much impact. I think I've already made enough mistakes in my life where Jesus is going to be a little disappointed in me when he sees me. But if I also have to go to him and say, hey, I received all these challenges, but talents that you gave me, and I wasted them, then he's going to be even more disappointed. So I'll tell people that other than my faith in my family and my kids and in my people in my family, I don't really give a shit about much else. I like to go hiking and stuff and fishing, but this is my calling. So I'm trying to make an impact so that the book Legacy I mentioned, if I can get you better, young kid, then maybe your next kid after you will take something from what I taught you, and then that kid is now better. So I'm 49, and I keep thinking about my dad who got sick at 58 and dead at 62. Like, hey, tomorrow's not promised, so I got to go now. So I'll tell these athletes, I got to go now, so I got to make this impact, because who knows? Find me someone else that needs help, because if they would just meet me halfway, I'll give them the other half with experience in the process. But you got to have something about them. And I'll bring me someone else so I can make another impact. Now, maybe they do, and maybe they don't. And there's social media marketing, and you can put out other stuff, which is great. I'm publishing a book here on September 30th and a digital course October 24th. So I just keep trying to put stuff out there to make an impact, and hopefully some of it sticks. And then if I come across anyone, I just ask, step forward with me, take a step with me, I'll show you. And then I offer money back guarantees. If you do the minimum and you're not better in 3 months, then here's your money back, because I failed. So I just keep asking and asking and asking. Move forward, put more weight in your back, go faster, suffer longer, and then take the step, and I'll get you better. So that's what I'm trying to build at my gym and the people I work with. So hopefully that word gets around somewhere.
Excellent. Yeah, you can tell your passion just came out there while you're doing it.
Yeah, I start talking faster, start stuttering a little bit more, and get excited. Yeah.
Well, if you need me to come up to Indiana and you got some beaches up there in Northwest?
Well, there is a beach right here in town in the lake, and it's not extensive, but there's that. And then you go to Indiana Dunes, the northwest corner of the state, and it's now a national park. It's right there on Lake Michigan. And then I'm from Cleveland, so there's plenty of lake on lakefront Lake Erie. So it would be great to hang out, because I'm working on this swim thing for next year. That SEAL swim. And
you're going to jump in for New York for the New York swim?
No, I was not prepared.
I'm talking about next year.
That's the plan. That's the plan. Yeah. So, given my abilities and what I'm good at, that is not it. It'd be like asking you to squat 500, or 400 pounds. It's something completely, like, up until this last couple months, I would swim as a kid at the local pool. Yeah, but I probably swam laps, I don't know, 10 times, 10 different times in 40 years, 50 years.
I have no
background. I got to do 3.5 miles next year in open water. So.
Yeah, but you've got fins, right?
Yeah, they sure do.
Yeah, fins, combat side trip, you're good to go.
Everyone swam freestyle.
Did they really? Well, I guess you want to get done quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So learning the breathing, because my approach is lift heavier, push a heavier sled, just go as hard as possible. So when the coach is telling me, hey, man, you need to just calm down and use your stroke and not fight your mechanics so much, because you're so tense on push. Like, you're going super fast, but you're just going to be exhausted in 200 meters. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I'm working on it.
I mean, just get into your rhythm. That's why you get conditioned. You do the sprints, you do long distance swims, and just keep working together. And then it's just your breathing. Once you get that breathing down, just
that's the part. It's the breathing.
But the one guy I put down there, John Doolittle, that he's a retired captain, swam for the Air Force Academy. Mm-hmm. He swam the English Channel, raising money for a fallen teammate, and he's just a great guy. But he is their. Have you ever heard of KAASTA? KAASTA?
No.
Or TU rather. And they've used these on some of the Olympic swimmers, Olympic athletes. There are these bands, pressure bands that help with blood flow, but he can talk about that. But KAASTA, ASTU. But he's just an incredible human being.
Well, what I'll probably do is send you an email saying, hey, can you connect us so that I can schedule him for like October or something like that.
Yeah, because we were just at a fundraiser together, and I told him that I was going to throw your name. I said, okay.
Great. Thank you. I found most of my guests are very generous with connecting me with more folks. And if we can make an impact, and, that seems to be the goal. So, that's the plan. With the SEAL swim, they raised $700,000 that weekend.
Yeah, that's
awesome. That was awesome. And incredible. The speeches were amazing. We're at ground zero, and I heard the police commissioner and the fire chief that were on duty during 9/11. They spoke, and then Bill Brown introduces Cindy Dietz. I turned my head. I was like, "No shit, that's got to be Danny's mother." And he goes, "Yep, this is Danny's mother." And I was like, "Well, this is horrible. So let's go listen to what she has to say." But it was awesome. So
yeah, it's yeah, that's an incredible event. I mean, it keeps growing every year. So.
Almost 400 athletes this year. There was one dude with a young kid with Down syndrome that did the whole thing.
No kidding.
Shit. I saw. I can't remember his name. They introduced him. He was on the news, and he's there in his little shorts, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." He had a little swim buddy with him that makes sure he's oriented. Was swimming the whole fucking thing. I was like, "Damn, dude, that's awesome."
I wonder who he trained with.
No, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, Mike, we talk all day. I know you got things to do, but man, I really had a great time, man. Thank you so much. Thank you for the generosity. Thank you for your service and your continued service, even though you're not, with the teams anymore, but you're still making an impact. And we're lucky to have you on. Thank you so much.
Well, appreciate that. Thanks for having me.
Right.
Take care.